Part 1, Chapter 15 of The Idiot. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Eva M. Martin. Part 1, Chapter 15. Katia, the maidservant, made her appearance, terribly frightened. "Goodness knows what it means, ma'am," she said. "There is a whole collection of men come, all tipsy, and want to see you. They say that it's Rogojin, and she knows all about it." "It's all right, Katia, let them all in at once." "Surely not all, ma'am. They seem so disorderly. It's dreadful to see them." "Yes, all, Katia, all, every one of them. Let them in, or they'll come in whether you like or no. Listen, what a noise they are making! Perhaps you are offended, gentlemen, that I should receive such guests in your presence. I am very sorry, and ask your forgiveness, but it cannot be helped, and I should be very grateful if you could all stay and witness this climax. However, just as you please, of course." The guests exchanged glances. They were annoyed and bewildered by the episode, but it was clear enough that all this had been prearranged and expected by Nastasia Philipovna, and that there was no use in trying to stop her now, for she was little short of insane. Besides, they were naturally inquisitive to see what was to happen. There was nobody who would be likely to feel much alarm. There were but two ladies present, one of whom was the lively actress who was not easily frightened, and the other the silent German beauty, who, it turned out, did not understand a word of Russian, and seemed to be as stupid as she was lovely. Her acquaintances invited her to their at-homes because she was so decorative. She was exhibited to their guests like a valuable picture, or vase, or statue, or fire-screen. As for the men, Ptitsin was one of Rogojin's friends. Ferdishenko was as much at home as a fish in the sea. Gania, not yet recovered from his amazement, appeared to be chained to a pillory. The old professor did not in the least understand what was happening, but when he noticed how extremely agitated the mistress of the house and her friends seemed, he nearly wept and trembled with fright. But he would rather have died than leave Nastasia Philipovna at such a crisis, for he loved her as if she were his own granddaughter. Afanasy Ivanovitch greatly disliked having anything to do with the affair, but he was too much interested to leave, in spite of the mad turn things had taken. And a few words that had dropped from the lips of Nastasia puzzled him so much that he felt he could not go without an explanation. He resolved, therefore, to see it out, and to adopt the attitude of silent spectator as most suited to his dignity. General Epanchin alone determined to depart. He was annoyed at the manner in which his gift had been returned, and although he had condescended, under the influence of passion, to place himself on a level with Ptitsin and Ferdishenko, his self-respect and sense of duty now returned, together with a consciousness of what was due to his social rank and official importance. In short, he plainly showed his conviction that a man in his position could have nothing to do with Rogojin and his companions. But Nastasia interrupted him at his first words. "Ah, General," she cried, "I was forgetting. If I had only foreseen this unpleasantness, I won't insist on keeping you against your will, although I should have liked you to be beside me now. In any case, I am most grateful to you for your visit and flattering attention, but if you are afraid—" "Excuse me, Nastasia Philipovna," interrupted the general, with chivalric generosity. "To whom are you speaking? I have remained until now simply because of my devotion to you, and as for danger, I am only afraid that the carpets may be ruined and the furniture smashed. You should shut the door on the lot, in my opinion. But I confess that I am extremely curious to see how it ends." "Rogojin!" announced Ferdishenko. "What do you think about it?" said the general in a low voice to Totski. "Is she mad? I mean mad in the medical sense of the word, "I've always said she was predisposed to it," whispered Afanasy Ivanovitch slyly. "Perhaps it is a fever." Since their visit to Gania's home, Rogojin's followers had been increased by two new recruits: a dissolute old man, the hero of some ancient scandal, and a retired sub-lieutenant. A laughable story was told of the former. He possessed, it was said, a set of false teeth, and one day when he wanted money for a drinking orgy, he pawned them, and was never able to reclaim them. The officer appeared to be a rival of the gentleman who was so proud of his fists. He was known to none of Rogojin's followers, but as they passed by the Nevsky, where he stood begging, he had joined their ranks. His claim for the charity he desired seemed based on the fact that in the days of his prosperity he had given away as much as 15 roubles at a time. The rivals seemed more than a little jealous of one another. The athlete appeared injured at the admission of the beggar into the company. By nature taciturn, he now merely growled occasionally like a bear, and glared contemptuously upon the beggar, who, being somewhat of a man of the world and a diplomatist, tried to insinuate himself into the bear's good graces. He was a much smaller man than the athlete, and doubtless was conscious that he must tread warily. Gently and without argument, he alluded to the advantages of the English style in boxing, and showed himself a firm believer in Western institutions. The athlete's lips curled disdainfully, and without honouring his adversary with a formal denial, he exhibited, as if by accident, that peculiarly Russian object, an enormous fist, clenched, muscular, and covered with red hairs. The sight of this preeminently national attribute was enough to convince anybody, without words, that it was a serious matter for those who should happen to come into contact with it. None of the band were very drunk, for the leader had kept his intended visit to Nastasia in view all day, and had done his best to prevent his followers from drinking too much. He was sober himself, but the excitement of this chaotic day, the strangest day of his life, had affected him so that he was in a dazed, wild condition which almost resembled drunkenness. He had kept but one idea before him all day, and for that he had worked in an agony of anxiety and a fever of suspense. His lieutenants had worked so hard from 5 o'clock until 11 that they actually had collected 100,000 roubles for him, but at such terrific expense that the rate of interest was only mentioned among them in whispers and with bated breath. As before, Rogojin walked in advance of his troop, who followed him with mingled self-assertion and timidity. They were specially frightened of Nastasia Philipovna herself, for some reason. Many of them expected to be thrown downstairs at once, without further ceremony, the elegant and irresistible Zalesheff among them. But the party led by the athlete, without openly showing their hostile intentions, silently nursed contempt and even hatred for Nastasia Philipovna, and marched into her house as they would have marched into an enemy's fortress. Arrived there, the luxury of the rooms seemed to inspire them with a kind of respect, not unmixed with alarm. So many things were entirely new to their experience: the choice furniture, the pictures, the great statue of Venus. They followed their chief into the salon, however, with a kind of impudent curiosity. There the sight of General Epanchin among the guests caused many of them to beat a hasty retreat into the adjoining room, The box